Father, we have been following you and trusting you, believing in you, digging into your word, trying to discern the things that you would have us to know, and you have not disappointed us. You have revealed yourself to us over and over again. You have directed our path, and so we're grateful for that. We thank you, Lord, that we can come together on this day and worship you and to lift you up and to say to you that we love you and that our desire, our heart is to be obedient to you. I pray, Father, for each one here today who may be visiting for a first or second or a third time, that you would speak to their hearts. You know every situation. You know what each person needs at this very moment. And so we believe, Lord, that you brought them here, and we believe because you did, you will speak to them. And so as we continue on in your story, we ask, Lord, that you would speak to us now. In Jesus' name. Amen. I think that all of us are striving towards something in life. We're all wanting purpose. We're all wanting to be validated. We want to think that as we go through life and we get to the end of the life, that there has been purpose for it, reason for it, that there is something there in the end. Well, comedian Jim Carrey participated in the Golden Globe ceremony, awards. And before he nominates before he reads the nominations for Best Motion Picture in a Comedy, he says to all the Hollywood elite folks that are gathered there at the Golden Globes, he says, I am two-time Golden Globe winner Jim Carrey. He says, you know, when I go to sleep at night, I'm not just any guy that goes to sleep. I'm two-time Golden Globe winner Jim Carrey, getting some well-needed shut-eye. And when I dream, I don't dream any old dream. No, sir. I dream about being Jim Carrey, three-time Golden Globe winning actor. Because then I will have arrived. Then I will have succeeded. He says, and then I can stop this terrible search for what I know ultimately won't fulfill me. Now, all the actors and the pretty people that were there, they all got a chuckle out of that. They're in their $1 million dresses and tuxes. But as the camera panned, you got a sense that people there really understood what Jim Carrey was saying. It rang true for them. And I imagine those people who are at home watching on TV, it rang true to them as well. If it doesn't fulfill you, even as a three-time Golden Globe award-winning actor, what makes life worthwhile? What is it that we're striving to get to? What is it that we need? We have been going through the story. If you haven't been with us, the story is basically the Bible in chronological format. It's a 31-week study. We've been going from creation, heading all the way towards the end, Revelation. And we have, I think, one more week. Next week is the last week for that. But as we have gone through this 31-week series, we have seen that God has a very specific purpose. And it's contained within these 66 books of the Bible. And we, in our examination, have seen how these books all fit together and where God is going. And that He does, in fact, have a plan, as strange as it may seem to us. The whole point of the story is to reveal God's upper plan. And He does so by revealing it through the characters in the Bible in their lower stories, as well as your story and my story in this life. Last week we talked about Paul and his first missionary trip. We said that he went on 3 missionary trips, and then eventually he took a trip to Rome. However, we see that he had a unique role. His role specifically was to take the message of the gospel to the Gentile world. And it is in part because of Paul's desire to spearhead that mission that we too, even today, thousands of years later, have access to this very same message that was preached 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem. And so throughout the book of Acts and the other letters that Paul has written, as well as the other writers in the New Testaments, we have gotten a glimpse into how God worked then and how he's continuing to work to this day, bringing us all back to a place where we can reside in eternity with him. And so today we're going to look at the end of Paul's life. We see that after that third missionary trip, he then goes to Rome. He's arrested. He's placed on house arrest, and scholars believe that he was actually let go after that. He went on another missionary journey, which is not chronicled in the book of Acts, and it is believed that on this next journey, he gets arrested again and he goes back to Rome for a second time. This time, he's not placed on house arrest. He's placed in chains and thrown in a dungeon. And ultimately, he would be killed by Nero. It's around 67 AD. Paul knows when he's sitting in that dungeon that his days are numbered, that it will be very shortly before they come and take his life. And he uses every single opportunity to take advantage so that he can share the gospel with people. And so he reaches out to one of his proteges, a young man named Timothy, who's a pastor in a new church in a place called Ephesus. This young man is dealing with some difficulties of his own. He's going through some challenges, and Paul wants to encourage him and share some wisdom and some instruction with him. And so he says to Timothy, 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 1 to 8, the following: "In the presence of God and of Jesus Christ, who will judge the living and the dead, and in view of his appearing in his kingdom, I give you this charge. Preach the word. Be prepared in season and out of season. Correct, rebuke, encourage with great patience and careful instruction. For the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths. But you, Timothy, keep your head in all situations. Endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, discharge all the duties of your ministry." Verse 6, he says, "For I am already being poured out like a drink offering, and the time for my departure is near. I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award me on that day. And not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. For his appearing. What is so compelling about Paul's words is that these are some of the last words that are recorded. These are the last words that anyone outside of his immediate vicinity are going to hear. These are even the last words that people, us, would hear thousands of years later. And he leaves these words because he knows that he's leaving people behind who must carry on the ministry of bringing the gospel to the ends of the earth. These words give us not only insight into what we should do, but they explain why we should do what we do. I don't care who you are, where you come from, how much money you have, how popular you are. All of us will contemplate our ultimate fate. Perhaps it's going to come sooner for some of us than others. All of us consider how our demise will take place. Nobody escapes this truth of death. Now, I don't know if it's still on the air. There's a show called 1,000 Ways to Die. Has anybody seen it? I know I'm not the only one. Is it still on the air? I don't know. When you watch this show, it can cause you to be concerned because you begin to realize that everything can potentially take you out. And you don't want to do anything. You don't want to go to your mailbox because that could be an end to your life. You don't want to put marshmallows in your mouth because that could take your life. You don't want to chew on a pen cap because that could be your demise. Never fall asleep in a tanning booth or change a tire, because all of these things can take you out. And the point is that if we spend all of our energy obsessing on when the end is going to come and what happens when that time comes, the chances are we're probably going to be paralyzed and not live much of a life at all. Paul says we can all live awesome, joy-filled lives of passion and fulfillment, a life with no regrets. Wouldn't you like to live that way? But in order to do that, we have to first deal with the reality of death. See, death is not the end of life. Death is not reserved for believers. Some people believe that, it's the Christians, those people who believe in Jesus, that when they die, they're going to go to some happy place. And everybody who didn't believe, they just cease to exist. That's not the case at all. Everybody will continue to live beyond the threshold of death. That door, death, is just a passageway to life. Where you are going to be 1 minute, you're going to be alive in this physical world, in this earthly realm, and the very next minute you're going to be just as alive in a very real place, a spiritual realm. Nobody fades away. Nobody goes to sleep. Everybody, without exception, is going to live beyond this physical world. It's just a matter of where. And you get to choose. Paul tells us that the key to live this awesome life, this life where we have no regrets, is being able to decide where you want to live. It's that simple. And then start living like you're already there. That requires us to do some things. The first thing it requires is that we begin to take ownership of who it is that we serve. Most people who have some maturity in their life, who've been around a while, who have some experience, already know this. But you younger folks that are coming along, you need to know that when you turn 18 or 21 and you move out of mom and dad's basement and you get that first job, you don't just get to start doing whatever you want, living for yourself. You will still answer to somebody. We all do. There's nothing magical about becoming an adult. Some choose money. Some choose a free living lifestyle of partying. Some choose the corporate ladder. Some choose to possess and to go after toys and stuff. Some pursue relationships. But Paul says, if you're going to take ownership of something, take ownership of something that is going to last you. Something that has some staying power. In verse 6, he says, "For I am being poured out like a drink offering, and the time for my departure is near." Now, a drink offering is not something that was uncommon. We see it in the Old Testament. It's used as a form of a worship. You provide a sacrifice to a god, and it was seen both in the Christian culture as well as in the pagan culture. Paul takes his view of this practice in the Roman culture, where they would have a banquet, a feast, and at the end of the banquet, the host and the guest would get together, and to honor the gods or to honor one another, they would take their wine glasses and they would pour out their wine as an illustration of their honor for one another or for their God. The people that Paul is writing to, in particular Timothy understood this practice, and he tells him, look, I'm pouring out my life. And you got to remember, he's sitting in a dungeon. He's waiting for execution. He knows his demise is right around the corner. And he's saying, in essence, that nobody can take my life. Caesar can't take it. I give my life. I took ownership of it a long time ago, and I gave it to Christ, and I've been following him. He's saying that because he knows where he's going when he dies. He knows he's going to reach his preferred destination. he's able to put these thoughts of death and difficulty and challenge out of his mind and really begin to live an abundant, joyful, passion-filled life. How would your life be different if you weren't consumed by any worries at all? Listen to what he says to the Philippians in chapter 1, verses 20 and 21. I eagerly expect and hope that I will in no way be ashamed, but will have sufficient courage so that now, as always, Christ will be exalted in my body, whether by life or by death. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. He tells his friends in the Corinthian church who were going through struggles of their own, he says, you cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of the demons too. You cannot have both part in both the Lord's table and the table of demons. If you look at a more contemporary version of this verse, it says you can't have it both ways. Banqueting with the master one day and slumming with the demons the next. Besides, the master won't put up with it. He wants us all or nothing. What do you give it to him? The great thing about God and about the Bible is that there's no ambiguity. God tells you exactly what he wants you to know. He tells you exactly what he expects of you. And then he leaves it to you. He says, okay, it's your choice. Whatever you want to do. And Paul is saying, trust me, I chose Jesus. I took ownership of my life and I gave it over to Jesus, and I have lived an awesome life. And regardless of what happens to me now, I have no regrets. But he also says, you have to understand that when you get to that point, you can't leave anything on the field. You have to be a person who's committed to being faithful. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a test or a project or some big event that you had to do? Maybe you planned a wedding, or you had planned some sort of community event, or maybe you were in a big game, a football game or a baseball game. And after it was over, you sort of had this pit in your stomach because you felt like you left something out. You felt like there was something that you overlooked. Now maybe you knew what you were supposed to do, but you didn't think it was going to make that big a difference, so you just ignored it altogether. And it's not until after the fact that you recognize, if I had only followed my gut and done what I was supposed to do, things could have been so much better. You know, Paul is a sports fan, and he likes using sports analogies. He says in verse 7, I fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. That's an awesome statement. Any Rocky fans in here? I didn't realize that this movie came out like a million years ago, like in 1976. But the thing that comes to my mind when I think about that movie is that Rocky at the end of this fight with Apollo Creed is just pummeled. He's bloodied, he's cut, he's just completely exhausted, his head is swollen, he looks a mess. But he gave everything that he had. There was no question that he left anything in the tank. He emptied it all in that ring. And Paul is saying, just like a fighter, I've remained faithful. My victory is found in going in all the rounds, hanging in there till the end. I was true to God and what God called me to do, and yeah, I looked pretty rough in the end, and I got beat up a little bit, but you know what? I didn't waver. I continued to fight, and that makes me a winner. What does being faithful look like? Now you can go and you can ask a boxer, or I guess the thing now is what, MMA, and you can ask them, what's the key to winning in the ring? And they'll tell you, it's not what you do in the ring at all. It's what you do before you get in the ring. It's what you do in the gym. It's what you do when no one else is around and people aren't cheering you on. When we come to church on Sunday morning, this is the ring. This is where people see us. It's easy to be faithful in here. Paul is talking about being faithful and fighting the good fight when we're outside of the ring. When you and Satan get to go toe-to-toe and there's nobody cheering you on. You get to the end of the month and and you're not making your sales quota. And so you decide, well, I'm going to cut some corners, maybe cheat a little bit so that I can get this last sale and get over the hump. Perhaps it's tax time. I guess it is tax time. Maybe you needed that last little deduction. And you scoured the books and you can't find it, and so you decide that you're going to get creative. Maybe you're on a business trip and you and the spouse have not been getting along well, and you go down to the club one night. You have an opportunity to engage somebody, and you think to yourself, well, I'm way out here, and nobody will know. It'll just be one night. You have to be faithful. You have to fight the fight. Those are the times where you have to give it your all and to resist Satan and to do the things that God has asked you to do. And I guarantee you that if you'll do those things, if you'll be faithful and you'll fight, when you get to the end of life, you will have no regrets. You don't want to get to the end of your life and have to wrestle with the reality of those things that you did when you could have been faithful. Paul tells us that the quality of our life is dramatically affected when we own who's going to be first in our life, and when we give 100% of our effort, when we remain faithful. But then he also says you need to do something else. You need to know what a win is. You have to be able to define it. Do not spend your life winning in the world's game and losing in your own game. With regard to faith or anything else in life, you can find yourself going through and winning greatly, but you're winning at something the world wants you to do, or winning at something that somebody else wants you to do. And when you get to the end, you realize, after all these years, it wasn't what you wanted to do, and it wasn't what God wanted you to do. How much of your life is dictated by what the world says you should be doing? I can't tell you how many successful people I have met who made all the right decisions, who came from privilege. They went to college, they studied the right subjects, they got into the right company, they made the right career decisions, they moved up the ladder, they had money and accolades, and 20, 30, 40 years later, when they get to retirement, they recognize the prime of their life has passed them by. They think, wow, I did all that, and that's not what I wanted to do with my life. And I was good at it. Can you imagine spending your whole life being really good at something that you really didn't want to do to begin with? How many AARP members? Don't be shy. There's 2 of us, 3 of us. I finally got my card. It's interesting that there's this whole new industry that has opened up for old people. And it's this idea of reimagining your life. That's what AARP calls it, I guess. I guess it's a pretty good name. Life Reimagined is what they call it. And the whole premise is, okay, now that you spent your life working, doing whatever you're doing, your 20, 30, 40 years, now let's spend the remainder of the time that you have left doing what you really want to do. You want to spend your life that way? Paul didn't. Listen to what he says in verse 8. It says, "Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award me on that day. And not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing." In Paul's day, athletes would compete in different types of competitions, but they wouldn't compete for a gold or silver or bronze medal or even a trophy. They would compete for a laurel wreath that they would wear around their head that would show everybody how great they were, that they were the champions. Paul says, don't compete for that, because in 2 or 3 or 4 days, that foliage is going to die and it's going to crumble and fall apart and you've got nothing left. Paul says, compete for something that isn't temporal. Compete for something that's going to last. He says, I compete for a crown of righteousness. That's what a genuine functioning follower of Jesus does. That's what your win is, that crown of righteousness. And it impacts this physical world as well as the eternal world. You don't get the benefits of being a follower of Jesus when you die. You get them from the moment of salvation. And the goal is that you would accept that sooner rather than later. So if you see that those are the goals, that's the finish line, then you can begin to put things into proper perspective. And you can go after the things that are important to you and to God, and you can put those other things aside that are getting you sidetracked. And the great news is that this has already been done for you. It's been written down. That's the whole purpose of the story. That's the purpose of the 66 books that we call the Bible, the Word of God. Let me ask you a question. You're at home one day and some of your friends come over to visit. Bill Gates from Microsoft, Warren Buffett, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, the Amazon king, Mark Cuban. You get together for a while, you have dinner or whatever, and then they say, my friend, we got together, we brainstormed, we decided we want to do something for you, and so we took everything that we know about business and life and being a success, and we've condensed it into this book, and here it is. And they put it on the table, and they walk out. What do you do? Are you just polite, say thank you, and then you put it on the shelf, never to be opened? I think not. I think you decide we're going to have a marathon reading session. You get that thing out, you begin to scour it, you read it, you begin to make notes in it, you begin to underline things, you begin to memorize things, you begin to take their ideas and start trying to apply them in your life to see how they work, and you do it day in and day out, and eventually what you're probably going to realize is you're going to end up being maybe not Bill Gates or Bezos, but you're going to be successful. Thing is, if that book really did exist, if you compared it to the Word of God, to the Bible, it would be like a nursery rhyme. This book, the Bible, will make you exponentially more wealthy than anything those guys could provide you. From cover to cover, if you'll read it, it defines what you need to do to win. And so I encourage you to start winning. Listen to Paul's words to the Corinthians in chapter 9, 24 and 27. He said, do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that's going to last forever. And therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike the blow to my body, and I make it a slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. Jesus puts it another way. In Mark 8, 34 to 38, he says that when he called the crowd to him along with his disciples, he said, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels. Let's be honest. This isn't rocket science. This is really pretty simple stuff. Do you want to win? Do you want to get to the end of your life and have no regrets? Do you want to know that you've done the right things? Do you want to have death in the proper perspective, then take ownership of your life. Choose a relationship with Jesus Christ. Be willing to leave everything that you have on the field. Be faithful in all things, both in the ring and out. Change your understanding of what it means to win. Stop playing the world's game. See, the last thing you want to do is end up like Jim Carrey, winning that third Golden Globe and realizing it's still very unsatisfying. There's no purpose. That's what we want to do here. We want to help people do that very thing. We want to help people decide to make a decision to follow Jesus Christ. To help you be faithful in that journey. And then to start living with some excitement and some joy in your life, because the end will be here soon enough. There's no reason to fret what's coming. We should be enjoying the time that we have before it and taking as many people as we can with us. So the question for you to answer is simply, are you ready to start living a regret-free life? There's only one way to do it, according to Paul. We're going to have our closing song. When we do this, there's a couple of things that we offer you to do. We have people who will be up here that you can come and pray with. Maybe you have some sort of ailment. Maybe there's somebody else in your life who needs to be prayed for. You can come up and let these folks know, and we'd be happy to pray with you. If you don't want to come in here, there's also someone in the conference room in the back. There's an opportunity to go in there and pray. If you want to come up and you have questions about what it really means to have a relationship with the Lord and want to pursue that, there's someone here that would help you with that as well. Maybe you're one of those people who have made the decision to follow Christ, but you haven't taken that first step of obedience to be baptized. And you want to team up with the other people who are going to get baptized on the 28th. We'd love to talk to you and explain to you what that means. Or maybe you've just been looking for a place where you can finally settle in and connect. You say, I've been running from place to place, and I've been searching. I just need to settle in with a family and start living a joy-filled life. We would love to have you. Now, we recognize we're not for everybody. And if we're not for you, that's okay. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you or with us. But we still want to find a place for you, because nobody should be going in this world alone. You need to have people to journey with. And so whatever your need is, take that opportunity. Don't miss an opportunity. Let's pray.
You're the hope of man, the breath of life. You hold my hand. When I feel a crumbling ground, I will stand. At your cliffside, I will trust your plan. Though I know it's so far down, choose to praise you, I choose to praise you. When anxious doubts and endless fears surround me, I choose to praise you.